Good morning. Thank you for joining us for today's MDICx webinar. My name is Stephanie Christopher. I'm the Program Director for Case for Quality at MDIC, and I'm delighted to be able to share with you today this third quarter of our quarterly update on the CDRH Case for Quality Voluntary Medical Device Manufacturing and Product Quality Pilot Program. One of the things we really love to do with these quarterly updates is to give you a chance to hear from industry participants who have participated in the program, because there's no better way for you to learn about this program than to hear from folks that have taken part in it. So today we have two participants who have participated in this program, and they're going to share about their company's experiences. Kathy Bardwell from Steris Corporation and Stephanie Fawcett Dominguez from Sylla Nova Biosciences. We also have Kim Kaplan from the CMMI Institute and Francisco Vicente from CDRH to provide updates from their perspectives as well. We will have time for questions at the end of the presentation. You can submit your questions either through the Q&A box or through the chat box that you find on the Zoom platform. So with that, I will turn it over first to Kim to start with an update from CMMI.
Thanks, Stephanie. So let me see if I have controls here. I may have clicked too many times now. It might just be delayed.
Well, I see the mouse moving, so you do have it. There we go.
Thank you. So I plan to provide just a quick overview and update on the pilot so that we can have more time for our participant speakers. That being said, I don't plan to read all of the content on these slides since they will be made available afterwards for those who are interested in using them for reference. So for those in the audience unfamiliar with CMMI, it is the Capability Maturity Model Integration, or a set of best practices that have been successfully leveraged by industries such as aerospace, automotive, finance, and healthcare, to name a few, to improve business performance. For over 25 years, CMMI has been adopted by thousands of organizations all over the world who are looking to achieve measurable business objectives. I've included a few highlights from some of our quantitative case studies, which are also linked in the second slide here for those who are interested in reading them further. So this pilot program is using the CMMI framework and appraisal methodology to help medical device manufacturers better understand, measure, and improve their capabilities to deliver high-quality products. And FDA, also recognizing its need to change, is adjusting their regulatory activities for participating manufacturers in order to support their improvement efforts and reach industry goals such as those that you see below here around reduced defects and faster time to market. Ultimately, this pilot endeavors to improve patient safety by cultivating a culture of quality across the entire medical device ecosystem. So for those of you who may not be aware, this pilot is actually part of FDA's larger Case for Quality initiative, which sprung from the idea that while compliance is important, it's not always enough. A device maker could be compliant and still manufacture a poor quality product, and vice versa. And for decades, FDA's regulatory focus has been solely on the manufacturer's quality system, meaning that there hasn't been much insight into other aspects of quality, such as culture and values. In turn, this has driven industry to separate the way it does work into all of the regulated products that live inside the quality system and then everything else. CMMI helps organizations to align their processes and work efforts with their business objectives to increase the likelihood that they'll meet those objectives. So we've defined 3 areas of success that we are looking to achieve with this 2018 pilot. value to participants or program effectiveness, consistency and scalability or adoption, and elevating the industry. On the right-hand side here, you'll be able to see the ways that we have defined these different aspects of success and the different ways in which we are measuring those aspects. So around program adoption, we've had 33 facilities enroll in the program, representing 17 different organizations. In total, we've completed 17 appraisals, with 11 of those in this calendar year and 6 early adopters from last year. We are on track to meet our goal of completing 30 appraisals in 2018, and we're also currently meeting expectations around timing, averaging appraisal to deliver. Around program effectiveness, you'll see results of the key pilots after they've gone through their appraisal. To date, the results have been fairly positive, as you can see here, with 100% of respondents recommending this pilot to other organizations. So with the data that we're seeing now from the initial 17 appraisals, we're beginning to see some industry trends. And one early opportunity could be around making processes habitual so that they aren't, for example, in this box that explains it, abandoned under stress when the organization is under stress. And with the first round of reappraisals coming up in Q4 of this year, we're excited to start tracking individual improvement journeys as organizations begin to realize where they might have ad hoc processes and become disciplined in their execution of those processes until they're habit. You can see these stages of discipline here in this upper right corner. So for next steps, we plan to continue to execute this program. We have our goal of completing 30 appraisals this year, and while we're on track, we still have some work ahead of us. This means continuing to work with FDA to refine and expand our collective capacity to scale. We're also preparing to test our initial outline for reappraisals, with the first round of second appraisals coming up soon. We plan to continue to collect and incorporate feedback from all stakeholders as we strive to balance the value add of reappraisals to participants with FDA's information needs. Similarly, we are testing testing several options for multi-site appraisals, understanding that while participation and benefits are considered at the facility level, that the total product life cycle, for example, may live across several facilities, and we want to be able to accommodate that view. We are also, outside of this appraisal process, trying to align with another Case for Quality initiative, the Product Quality Outcome Analytics team. Specifically, there are particular measures around product quality, such as safety, effectiveness, reliability, and availability that we might be able to collect from our participants to determine if there is a correlation between the appraisal activities and associated improvements and performance around these different quality domains. And finally, we are actively reviewing our lessons learned to help us understand and define what a 2019 program could look like. We expect to finalize our conclusions in some sort of year-end review document or white paper with input from all of our stakeholders, including participants, FDA, MDIC, and our appraiser community. And here we've included some additional resources for those who are interested in learning more. As I mentioned earlier, these slides should be made accessible sometime after this webinar on MDIC's website. We have a number of different things, whether you're interested in reading about it or you'd prefer to watch a video or listen to a podcast. And with that, I will give it back to you, Stephanie.
All right, thanks, Kim. So I will hand over control to our next speaker, that is Stephanie Fawcett-Dominguez from Sylla Nova, to talk a little bit about her company's experience taking part in the pilot. Stephanie, you should have control now.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. So I'm going to talk about our experience in this pilot program as a small medical device company. Regarding Sylla Nova, and I'm trying to advance. There you go. All right, a little bit about us then. We're a company founded in 2000. We're dedicated to transforming the treatment of cardiovascular diseases and promoting positive outcomes in patients. And we develop and manufacture and market a family of products based on our coating PZF technology. Our headquarters are in San Antonio. We have about 50 employees worldwide, and our manufacturing site is in Carlsbad in California. An overview of our enrolled site. So we have one manufacturing site with about 38 people on site. We have one product manufactured there, a coronary stent system. On site, we have also a group of functions supporting manufacturing. We have operations, demand planning, distribution and logistics, R&D, manufacturing and engineering, purchasing, the supply chain, quality activities, whether it's quality control, quality assurance, engineering, complaint handling, auditing, and regulatory affairs. Regarding the timeline, our timeline in this program, we were accepted on January 11 of this year. As a benefit for enrolling, the FDA waived our PMA post-approval inspection. We then had the appraisal conducted in April. Since then, we've had quarterly touch points with our lead appraiser, and we've submitted our metrics to the FDA, and we're preparing our next step in the program. So how did we get there? Why did we enroll in the program, and what did we go through to enroll? So we became aware of the program in late 2017 through the FDA website, actually. And then we started gathering information through the MDIC webpage. We attended webinars and listened to other medical device companies that participated in the program so far. And we compiled information for our executives to look at and see whether or not it would be a good thing for the company. We convinced them, and then finally in January, that's where we were enrolled officially in the program. And really, the engagement of all the executives was from the get-go, because they saw the value of the program, even for a small company, what it could bring to an organization like ours. So they completely support the enrollment, the appraisal, and the follow-ups, and all the next steps in this program. An appraisal versus an audit, so that was a new thing for us, right? We had never conducted an appraisal, of course. We had hosted audits, of course. So in this appraisal, we used a limited pool of interviewed resources. We didn't have to produce large amounts of documented evidence. The interviews were with the people that were responsible for the work, and was done in an open conversation environment and with limited preparation time. So as opposed to an audit, as all of you very well know, there usually requires an audit room, a back room, a large amount of resources that are solely focused during the whole duration, consists of documented preparation and review, assigning hosts and a subject matter expert, and is typically done in a type of a guard conversation environment. and also involves significant preparation of documents, rationales, and justification, in anticipation of questions. So how did we prepare for our appraisal? So we attended webinars where we were able to gather, feedback from participants, just like this one. We also, ahead of our appraisal, we were able to attend the monthly MDIC calls with the other participants that gave us an idea of what was going to happen. And then we were able to connect with other participants also. That was nice. So we had direct conversation with people that had been through their appraisal before, and give us some feedback regarding their experience. We also had to learn a little bit what the model was about. So we discovered the model, and our lead appraiser gave us, some education on it, and we had access to the CMMI website. Our most difficult task was then to translate the CMMI language, what it means in a, we're used to a quality system language, whether it's the CFR or ISO. We didn't have any type of business excellence initiative in the company, so we had to get used to that language. So it requires a little bit of translation and decoding, but once we figured that out, then everything was pretty easy. As far as preparing the interviewees, we basically try to explain what each practice area was about, that this was not an audit, so there was not going to be the same experience and the same interaction with the appraisers. That of course they could answer more than just the question, and they will have to explain their process without supporting documentation. So that was also something new. Typically in an audit, we have, we can bring a procedure and explain with the procedure. So they had to prepare themselves to truly talk about what are they doing and why are they doing it. The scope, you may already be familiar with the areas. There are 11 practice areas in this pilot program. We were assigned to expert appraisers. They stayed 5 days on site with actually only 10 hours of interviews, reviews, and result sessions. So it was minimally disruptive to the business. They reviewed 11 practice areas at a level 2 of a discovery appraisal. And then after that week, they gathered and summarized results, and they were detailed with the strengths, weaknesses, and notes, which are a little bit like an observation and a suggestion. As far as outcome, so what was the outcome of this appraisal? What did we gain from it? So first, it had a very good impact on employee morale. Because it really validated that we are doing the right thing. And it was really empowering for the interviewees to talk freely about what they are doing and why they are doing it. It also made everybody realize that interactions and communications between processes is really critical. And that's something that's not necessarily emphasized in an audit environment. The program also gives time to implement any improvement to the areas of weakness, so we don't have to rush and respond to a 483. And then after the results are communicated, there's also an open conversation with the appraisers regarding the next steps, what's best for the company, and for example, which level for which practice area for next time. Life after the appraisal. So we've had quarterly touch points with our lead appraiser to follow up on some of the actions, and we sent our metrics to the FDA. So the metrics are a work in progress with the other also program participants. We see our metrics are likely subject to change as we evolve and we grow into this program. I would say mostly what we gain from participating at this pilot is an opportunity to influence the direction and help shape the program and have a voice we would otherwise not have as a small entity.
I'm Nicole Barber. I'm the Director of Regulatory Affairs here at Sylla Nova. So I'm going to quickly go over some of the benefits we've seen since enrolling. And as Stephanie already mentioned, one major benefit we've had is that our PMA post-approval inspection was waived and somewhat replaced with the appraisal that we underwent. And another benefit we were extremely interested in is the expedited 5-day review of a 30-day notice, since we have a Class 3 PMA approved device. And since completing our appraisal, we've submitted 2 30-day notices, and we received the 5-day review for 1 out of the 2. The one that did not receive the 5-day review, it was due to the specific nature of that change, and we had a discussion with FDA in advance, and they told us that the streamlined format, the abbreviated form wouldn't be appropriate for the type of change. So we submitted in the traditional format, and it was reviewed in 30 days. But for the next 30-day notice, we did receive the 5-day review, so we were very pleased. And the review branch, which is ICDB in our case, they've requested that we touch base with them in advance, let them know when these are coming to help them sort of pilot this pilot program as they get used to the abbreviated format, and so that they can get their systems in place for the 5-day review.
Thank you, Nicole. So that concludes our presentation for Sylla Nova.
Great, thank you, Stephanie and Nicole. We are now going to turn things over to Kathy Bardwell from STERIS. She's going to share a little bit about her company's experiences.
I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about STERIS and our journey to date in the pilot program, focusing predominantly on our newly designed metrics. I'll start by providing a little background of who STERIS is and what we do. STERIS offers a broad set of sterilization and disinfection solutions to a wide base of customers around the world. We have approximately 12,000 associates worldwide and operate in more than 100 countries. Our offerings in the healthcare space are separated into 4 business segments: healthcare products, healthcare specialty services, contract sterilization, and life sciences. In today's presentation, we're going to focus on applied sterilization technology, or AST, with particular attention to our Libertyville North facility, which was the first location enrolled in the pilot program for STERIS. STERIS AST provides customers with a network of contract sterilization and laboratory facilities delivering technology-neutral services in gamma irradiation, electron beam, ethylene oxide, steam, and X-ray sterilization. As a contract sterilizer, we view ourselves as a significant supplier to our customers. We're really an extension of their manufacturing process. We work hand in hand with our customers in all phases of the product life cycle, including product development, materials testing, protocol generation, and sterility validation. The point of this disclaimer is to remind you that simulated data has been used in these materials. Although the slides will say AST and Libertyville North, this is not real production data, but rather simulated data for illustrated purposes. In contract sterilization, we don't manufacture a product. Rather, we provide a service. We chose the tagline, "We process quality," to serve as a constant reminder to each of us at STERIS that our small part in the manufacturing life cycle of our customer's product is paramount to our customer's offering. Prior to CMMI and the case for quality, our focus was to measure compliance-related metrics: timely reporting of MDRs, average time to complaint closure, number of recalls, by way of example. Don't get me wrong, this helped us instill discipline and adherence to our documented policies and procedures. However, it didn't advance the maturity of our quality management system to the level we expected. We found ourselves always looking in the rearview mirror, if you will. The case for quality gave us a new perspective on measuring operational indicators across a broad range to include all functional departments that impact the quality management system and therefore the quality of the service we provide to our customers. CMMI suggested we look at quality metrics as it pertains to safety, reliability, availability, and effectiveness. What you're going to see today is AST-specific metrics that help us measure the continuous execution of our processes. Internally, we provide these metrics quarterly to each facility. The facility's job is to analyze the data and pledge their commitment to continuous improvement through specific action plans. By tying these results to our quality campaign, there is signage and storyboards throughout our facilities specific to these action plans, which is gaining momentum with our associates. The data is then rolled up from the plants and analyzed by modality, by zone, and by region of the world during division-level management reviews. The senior leaders of STERIS review the results on a quarterly basis, as does our compliance committee of the board of directors. Our first metric relates to safety. We have several safety metrics in our AST organization. However, we chose this employee health and safety metric because it focuses on the well-being of our associates. We have been on a continuous improvement journey throughout our facilities and centralized support functions for a number of years. Being active participants in OSHA's VPP STAR program has proven beneficial as we strive to maintain world-class safety. A couple points to note. First, our industrial class is medical equipment manufacturing. The class is assigned by the Department of Labor. They look at STERIS in total, and as such, they've classified us as a manufacturer, including AST within this classification. In addition, OSHA average recordable rate is based on the results from U.S. data only. And then finally, a consortium of large organizations under the direction of DuPont Safety developed the term world-class safety excellence and defined how a company can achieve this prestigious recognition. The chart depicts that Libertyville North has exceeded not only world-class recordable rates for our industry, but also has surpassed AST globally. Libertyville North has been identified as a facility that has gone beyond basic compliance and is ready to be assessed by OSHA under their VPP program. The site's VPP STAR application is currently under review by OSHA, much like the case for quality. Once OSHA accepts the site into the program, they will conduct an on-site assessment with an overall evaluation of the health and safety management system. This next slide begins to define our operational performance metrics, focusing on reliability. In each of our performance metrics, we have benchmarked Libertyville North against our entire chain of contract sterilization facilities. The Libertyville North facility processes medical devices, bioprocessing, pharmaceutical, labware, and consumer products. Products are exposed to radiation for sterilization or for bioburden reduction and for industrial irradiation using cobalt-60 radioactive isotope. The irradiator has a carrier system where each carrier is loaded in a specific configuration and rotated around a source rack containing the cobalt-60 material. First pass yield is the percentage of irradiation runs moving through production without any dosimeter rereads. Dosimeters are monitoring devices that are used on every processing run to record the dose of radiation delivered to our customer's product. Dosimetry results are evaluated by quality operations to ensure customer specifications have been met and that the product can be released to the customer. Dosimeters may require rereads if there was a reading error or an anomaly identified in the initial reading. The results of dosimeter rereads are analyzed by quality operations to determine if the reread value is valid through established acceptance criteria. The customer receives notification in the event the dosimeter reread value is reported in the final dosimeter value. This real-time reporting has increased transparency with our customer and provides a measure of operational effectiveness for which we judge ourselves internally and our customer evaluates our overall performance. The graph and supporting charts depict production runs and reruns for all irradiation modalities, which includes gamma, E-beam, and X-ray for the fiscal years 16 through 18. As you can see, these graphs depict global irradiation production runs increasing year over year, and our first pass yields continue to improve. We also create metrics quarterly, and by way of example, this slide depicts first pass yield for the first quarter of our fiscal year. This gives you a better idea of how the information is shared within the organization on a periodic basis. In summary, these graphs and supporting charts compare the current quarter's runs and rereads against the prior year's quarterly production data for all irradiation modalities. What is powerful is that each facility receives their specific results compared to their zone and compared to the division as a whole on a quarterly basis. This stimulates idea sharing and, I might say, a little friendly competition. While most rereads do not result in an out of specification, those that do can result in financial loss to our customers and to ourselves. The financial loss depicted in these charts is AST recorded loss based on our customer contracts and does not measure the full impact to the customer in terms of their total manufacturing costs or the market value of their product. This is our portion of the loss or recorded liability. The year-over-year charts show financial damages broken out by the Americas and rest of world, with the annual goal or target to minimize damages each year. We have a division-wide initiative underway to first understand the facility-specific results and possible causes for damages. Next, identifying actions to be taken to reduce the occurrence of product damages. In some cases, the damages may be the result of customer packaging or even dose range settings that are too restrictive. In those instances, we involve our customers to collectively brainstorm on what may be done to reduce the likelihood that a damage will occur. The bottom chart represents the number of customers inconvenienced by our damages. This next chart also focuses on availability. The prior chart captured the product loss due to damages, and this chart is focused on customer feedback specific to the loss of product and what can be done to minimize or eliminate reoccurrence. So what you see in the chart at the far left is a list of damages by customer for last year, both occurrences and financial loss. The graph introduces customer satisfaction scores independently collected by our third-party provider, focusing particularly on improving service levels. We will be surveying these customers a second time to remeasure their customer satisfaction following the process improvements that we implement to reduce product loss. We will also be comparing year-over-year damages, looking for repeat customers. For those customers with multiple losses, we will be developing action plans specific to their product and processing. For the other customers, we will have site-specific action plans to address the root cause of the damaged product. These charts provide a global view of CAPA management for 3 fiscal years. In calendar year 2015, STERIS completed a large acquisition with sites predominantly outside the United States. When we dug into their CAPA data, we found that they had a similar situation with the structure of their CAPA system that we had previously experienced, and that is that nearly all nonconformances and customer complaints were escalating to CAPA investigations. Not only does this artificially inflate the number of CAPAs, more importantly, it is straining the time of our resources. We know at times a very in-depth investigation is necessary, while at other times a simple investigation is all that's required, all based on the risk of the event. Similar to the cleanup we completed for our legacy sites in the United States, we're in the process of a cleanup for our rest of world sites, and that is why you see a decline in the CAPA rate in the recent years. Implementing this enhanced process has afforded us the opportunity to focus on those events of highest risk and resolve the issue. The final metric represents effectiveness. Operational effectiveness for us is the measure of how often we do everything we say we're going to do. It provides insight into the overall effectiveness of our processes by measuring not just quality performance, but also production performance. Operational effectiveness is the overall proportion of runs moving from incoming receiving through final shipping without any problems. The metric captures nonconformances, complaints, rereads, and damages as a percentage of production runs. The intent being to minimize the occurrence of these inputs, thereby delivering superior service and performance to our customers. We are asking our facilities to analyze their facility-specific results to identify opportunities specific for their operations to continue to reduce the number of occurrences, thereby improving our overall customer experience. The year-over-year chart shows production runs from FY16 through 18, which are increasing slightly in the low single digits each year. While the production runs increase, operational effectiveness for both Libertyville North and Global AST remain pretty consistent. As we have been maintaining a level above the 96% target, we will be increasing our target goal from 96% to 98% going forward. To achieve this goal, the AST Quality Organization will be working with their partners in operations and will be utilizing the 8-step problem-solving process at each facility to further refine our execution and eliminate errors. In summary, CMMI gave us great direction to look at our performance metrics holistically, not just centered around the quality management system, but rather the quality management system in tandem with our operations. They suggested we consider metrics that coincide with the safety, reliability, availability, and effectiveness of our overall processes and operations. On the right side of this slide, you will note the metrics we chose for STERIS AST. As we have stated, we developed these metrics as a result of becoming part of the pilot program. Our partners in operations were heavily involved in designing and developing these metrics. The reality is these metrics remain a work in process, and until we're certain they continue providing us with the actionable information we're looking for, we'll make adjustments as we see necessary. Today we've shown you our contract sterilization metrics. In manufacturing, some of our metrics are very similar and some not so similar. For example, we do measure first pass yield in manufacturing, but the calculation is different. As you recall, first pass yield in contract sterilization is tied to the dosimeter rereads. In manufacturing, first pass yield is a measure of product failures that are documented at final test. In addition, in manufacturing, because there are so many component and subcomponent suppliers, we decided to have metrics that track the success of these third-party suppliers at meeting our defined specifications and doing so in a timely manner. I'll conclude my portion of today's meeting by saying the CMMI maturity assessment provided us with an evaluation of the health of our operations, engaging individuals most familiar with our day-to-day work. The assessment helped us identify strengths and weaknesses and noted opportunities for consideration. Equally as important as identifying our strengths and weaknesses, the assessment helped us develop operational excellence metrics that measure the continuous execution and quality oversight of our processes. Thank you very much, and at that, I'll turn it back over to Stephanie.
Thanks, Kathy. Our final presenter today needs no introduction. Francisco Pacenti is the Program Manager for Case for Quality at CDRH, and he's going to conclude our webinar today with a brief overview. Also remind you that we do have the opportunity to take some questions at the end, so if you want to submit some questions, you can do so through the Q&A box. Cisco?
Thank you, Stephanie, and I really want to take a moment to thank both Stephanie and from Sylla Nova and Kathy, both for the openness, for the engagement, and for the willingness to really step forward into some of the efforts that we are doing here through this pilot. And Let's go forward and get some things started. So I just want to give everybody a quick update, I think collectively from an FDA standpoint of what's happening now, what we're learning, you know, what things we're trying to do to change the status quo, and then, you know, just touch on the metrics that we've been receiving, because I think it's a good follow-on to what Kathy has just offered, and where we want to be moving forward, or what you might expect over the next few months. So moving into that. This is just an overview of where we are. Right now we are, at least the last check that we had these numbers updated, you know, we've got quite a number of participants engaged. There is a wide mix of product categories moving through there. We are starting to get participant results, and a lot of the benefits that I think we're trying to see, or we're hoping and we're expecting to realize over the course of the pilot, are being collectively shared by the participants. I think similar to what you just saw, you know, with Kathy's presentation, there is an openness and I think a little bit more trust going on with what we are intending to do with this, and really what the full benefit of the appraisal process and the methodology is. The agency in this case, I think we've always tried to make clear, this is not intended to be a compliance tool. It's not intended to be a gotcha. It is really trying to transform. How do we engage to deliver the best outcome for the patient? And I think to that end, people have been very open to sharing the results. I just love putting this slide up there because I think Al Kraus from CDRH recently shared this at an open meeting where he demonstrated here was the original output that they've got from, you know, one of the early appraisals, and then, you know, what it looked like after the reassessment. It really was something centered and focused around, you know, driving some of their own needs and their own improvements. And because we weren't talking compliance anymore, really the dominant factor was, what is it that you need to accomplish from a business standpoint? What's going to deliver the best impact to your customer? And then focus on those pieces and portions that is going to drive that. And I think with some tangible focus and actionable feedback around that, I think they were able to drive significant improvements across the spectrum of the practice areas we were looking at. I think that is a case that we're seeing repeated over and over again in some of the pilot participant companies. So it's really been, I think, engaging for them. It's been a very different dynamic internally, and I think from our side, being able to see some of that shift and what actually drives or predominates the, you know, the improvement activities when you've given a little bit more space for that to really be driven by what is the need. It does make a significant and tangible result across the whole spectrum of things I think that we're caring about in FDA. I've shown this in a few slides beforehand, but I wanted to just highlight this again to keep people in the right frame of mind. This is not, again, intended to be about compliance. It is supposed to be a reflective tool, not just for the manufacturers themselves, but I think from a standpoint to us as FDA and as a regulator and the whole regulatory system, you know, understanding what is working well, not just at the organization, you know, what is it that they are baselined at and how are they going to focus their efforts over the next time period. You know, in this case for the pilot, it's been a year. But in situations like this, when we can collectively see this data in aggregate form, we can really find out that there are distinct patterns in areas that are not necessarily a manufacturing-driven problem, a medical device manufacturing-driven problem. It is a artifact of what's going on in the regulatory system, and we can start actually taking action collectively to really think through how do we change that? How do we move that needle so that this isn't a, you know, something that stagnates and just becomes another compliance tool. Learning from the course of this year has actually allowed us to say, okay, we realize these things have changed from their original intent from a regulatory standpoint and are now really hindering maybe some of the progression we want to see. So how do we go back and reset and really turn these systems into a value add? And you'll see more of this coming up in the next year with the work that MDIC has been engaging and helping to lead in terms of how do we collectively simplify the CAPA system? How do we really generate and create a safe space that's centered around, you know, solving problems, learning, improving? You know, there were a couple of other project areas that are implemented there, but I just highlighted those two simply because they just align nicely with the charts that were going on there. If we go to the next slide. Okay, changing the status quo. I think I really appreciate that, you know, we had the team from Sylla Nova really highlight ahead of time that this is a learning process, I think, from both sides of the equation. I like the pictures. They really do speak volumes. We've got the idea of an organization who took a picture of their back room going through a compliance audit versus one going through the maturity appraisal, just to show the distinction of what was happening. You know, it's the idea of moving the mindset away from defend and make sure you can demonstrate everything you need for the auditor versus let's be transparent, let's be open. Let's really move the dynamic towards one where we're looking to impact the best outcome we can from a patient and gain the most value we can. We internally are also learning through this process. You know, the idea of these 30 days and bringing them down to the streamlined review. You can see the distinction there. There are some different things that we are doing, but they are very different than what we've traditionally done. So it is also a learning process for us. The review divisions have actually committed significantly in terms of how do they make this process work. They've seen the impact and the value. In some cases, as was highlighted you know, by the Sylla Nova team, there may be a situation where the change may not be appropriate for that, but we're looking to even capture those and really be a little bit more transparent with where that threshold was hit and why, so that it actually helps provide a little bit more guidance into what's expected in the industry, and hopefully maybe from there we can drive further improvements on the road. But at the very least, we can start getting the majority of these streamlined situations happening and moving through the process. But I think from a review standpoint, you can see the distinction. You know, we had one that went about 10 days, but for the first time ever, there were about 7 changes incorporated into one streamlined review. It involved a little bit more interaction, but you know, finally it did go through with all the modified changes. And then comparatively, you could see that oftentimes what we get is a very big package of data and information that does take a while to get through the process. So it really is, and this has been something that's happening across the board, right? We've got hesitancy that's happened externally with some of the manufacturers as we start to build up the trust, but it's also happened internally. That has actually changed dramatically over the course of the pilot to date. It's really moved from that hesitant standpoint to a full engagement. What is it that we can do to drive some improvement in this process? How do we make this work? The shift to the problem-solving mindset internally and externally. Everybody's actually identifying both internally and externally. Now we're in the situation where we're trying to keep up with some of the new opportunities and the new ideas that have been generated. And you know, the idea of moving away from, you know, assuming and reacting to what is maybe a snapshot of what's happening to really driving a full understanding and insight as to what's going on both internally and externally. I like the, I really truly appreciate the openness of, you know, the STERS team in terms of what they've shared. And this has been something that we understood in the very beginning was going to be a bit of a learning process throughout the course of the pilot. And we allowed for that flexibility. When we talk about what are the right quality indicators versus the compliance ones we're focusing on, you know, traditionally, the whole regulatory system has been evolved to monitor the pieces that the regulator is going to look for or look into. And those are fine, but they don't always necessarily provide the best insight into not just what is the current state, but how responsive is the organization and what is the organization engaged in that actually drives the improvement versus just a reactive correction. The metrics and measures that as they're shared, not only in terms of what they were, but what they were doing with them is really the insight that we were looking for. Those become a very good model for what is of value to the organization, what are they monitoring, how are they monitoring progress, here's how quickly they can identify things. And you know, if we've got that same insight and visibility going on, we know that the organization is on top of any situation. I think Kathy mentioned that eventually, as all organizations, I think, do and should, those metrics may evolve, and that's perfectly fine. We're not intending for you to be locked into those. That's, I think, what the process needs to enable. But, you know, really getting to that point where we understand that this allows us to completely change our dynamic for not just the oversight, but responding, engaging, and anything that happens in the future. So it's one of these, it's really critical, I think, to not just what the base of this program is. I really like the reference back to the OSHA model, but the future of where we want to go and how do we want to really be engaged in terms of those people who are committed to that quality process, to that level of engagement and transparency, and how do we shift in order to be able to support, enable, and encourage more of that to happen. And here are just some examples, both again from the STAIR side and some of our other participants in terms of what they were considering and monitoring and providing to us for the course of the pilot. So it's been a good shift over the course of the year. So what are we looking at to move forward with in the coming months? We want to expand the appraisal to focus to include the design and supplier management. We did a very limited scope appraisal set for the pilot. We've seen a lot of excellent performance across companies in that limited scope, and several of our participants are asking for what's the next level. Though I would love to be able to engage into these next pieces in order to get more value and more impact to what's happening in the organization. So that expansion is something we'd like to bring in, allow, especially as we go into a year 2 type scenario. We've seen the benefit and the impact, and this isn't about getting stuff necessarily rushed through. It is really about enabling a better, more focused review that is relevant to, I think, what would be more clinically driven or safety issue components that would allow changes, modifications, anything that enables improvement of the product and improvement of the outcome to really run through the process faster, because that's what's important for that patient population. So when we talk about year 2 and beyond, what are we looking at? We're looking at streamlining what happens maybe in an appraisal, or how do we interact based on the operational and product quality performance metrics. We are already testing that theory out in terms of, and I think Kim might have alluded to this in the beginning, participants who are in here who are submitting this level of data, and we've got the transparency understanding as to what the data means. A year 2 appraisal can be very focused and limited on a couple of core things to make sure it's sustained. And then if there's more that the organization wants to pursue in terms of their internal value, we can shift and adjust from there. Expanding the practice areas, we've already talked a little bit about that, or the capability levels that they're engaged in. There is effort to integrate, and you saw some of the metrics coming out in terms of the safety, the effectiveness, availability, reliability, to start to integrate 2 programs that were under the Case for Quality, both the voluntary pilot and the product quality outcome analytics, to try to really close that feedback loop of what is happening both in the production of the device, but what happens once the device gets out into the field and the information comes back into the organization. And then something that we are looking into over the course of it, how do we take this and establish this into a full FDA program? So that is key for the next few months and what's happening over in the next quarter. And I think that's where we will be engaging. If we've got more information and engagement, you're looking to collaborate, we always have these links available. Feel free to contact myself, the Case for Quality email, or anybody at MDIC, or I think even some of the pilot participants have made themselves available to ask or answer any questions or share their experiences if anybody is interested. And I think from that end, I'll turn it back over to Stephanie. And I think, Stephanie, you said you might have some time for some questions.
Yeah, we have a few minutes for questions. Thanks, Cisco. And the first question actually is to you. I've heard that perhaps a handful of FDA employees have gone through CMMI appraiser training to be appraisal team members for the pilot. Can you please speak to that a bit and explain what role those FDA employees will have in the program?
Sure. So we are actually, the more we get people accustomed to the terminology, language, the approach and methodology that we're using for CMMI. I think the better it is to integrate and make some of the internal changes that we're trying to go to. So that's just from a standpoint of our own internal improvements that it's of value. But the additional piece of this is, and we've been trying to figure out a way to enable this to be an additional dialogue or an additional resource moving forward. As we have been evaluating maybe the scalability of the program, we do need to make sure we've got people with the right skill sets and more of them across the board. Allowing some of our internal team members to start getting that experience base, some of that review base, and participate in some of the appraisals if the organization is comfortable. It is not a requirement at the moment. We can actually do that, reduce, I think, a little bit of the cost and scope, the cost of the appraisal based on the FDA engagement. It does get exposure, additional exposure to our team members, and it lets them see directly what the impact is and what the methodology and thoroughness of the appraisal method are. So it does open up the dynamic and shift what people can see or expect from this type of engagement internally, and from, especially for the smaller manufacturers from a resource standpoint, does provide an additional option. These appraisals are not an enforcement tool or intended to be that way, so that is not the expectation of the FDA participants who are on the team.
Great. Thanks, Cisco. Another question. There are two new programs for manufacturers this year, MDAP and MDSAP. It's not clear to me if or how the programs communicate with one another. One of the benefits of the MDAP program is to take off the FDA surveillance program, but it's not obvious if the MDAP appraisal also fills MDSAP requirements for FDA only. Can you explain how, if this perceived gap is being discussed, and if so, if we can expect any clear position from FDA?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a lot of acronyms in one question.
There's a lot. So let me start with the MDSAP is the Medical Device Single Audit Program. That program is actually established as a program this year. It was in pilot mode last year. And what it does is provide an opportunity for global harmonization on a single audit or single audit process. It was intended to provide a mechanism for several of the participating countries, and I think we're up to 5 or 6 now, to have one medical device appraisal, share information across all the regulatory bodies, and allow for that to be the assessment basis moving forward. It is, very disruptive, I think, from any medical device manufacturer to have an FDA audit, then possibly have a European audit, and maybe somebody from Health Canada come and audit. This really helps align several of those regulatory bodies into one process and one methodology. So that's the Medical Device Single Audit Program. It is very much an audit and compliance program that we just now broadly share across several regulatory countries in the regulatory framework. With the MDDAP, which is the Medical Device Discovery Appraisal Program that we're doing with CMMI, it changes the dynamic away from looking at compliance. You've assumed that if you've actually had an FDA audit or an MDSAP audit, you qualify for the program. Now let's look at, is the actual quality system delivering not just on the compliance elements, but is it actually delivering the value and the outcomes that you're looking for? And is there a better way to really move the needle on that? And that's what the one that we're using now, the MDDAP, is geared towards. We are very much in discussion with the MDSAP program, and they are, engaged with us. They literally sit just around the hall from me. So they've been actually part of receiving some of the CMMI training. So we are actively engaged to see where these things can deliver some alignment moving forward. We are very much in early stages on the MDDAP part, and there is data and metrics that we would need to collect in order to be able to demonstrate the applicability and utility moving forward. But We understand that that gap is there. We are aware of it. We are working together to make sure we've got a path moving forward. But right now, they are two independent programs, and it really is based on the need of the organization to decide which ones they want to participate in.
Great. Thanks, Cisco. Well, we are at the top of the hour. I want to thank our speakers, Cisco, Kathy, Stephanie, and Kim, and I want to thank you all for attending. Slides and the recording from today's webinar will be available on the MDIC website in the coming week, and I will send an email to all registered attendees when those are available. Thank you for joining us.